Yeah, on my
Seems
other.
live.
Yeah. So here we are with Dustin Blocker from Hand Drawn Pressing. What's going on, Dustin?
Hey, how you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. So this is our Facebook Live Q&A in quarantine, and quarantine keeps going longer, so we're rolling these out,
Yeah.
and we've done all kinds of these, and they're on our Facebook page. We've done them from general studio tour to Mar machines to vinyl mastering to electroplating, and kind of walking down the vinyl manufacturing path. We're at actual vinyl record pressing.
Hey, look at
So
that.
yeah. So my name is Chris Mara. I own Welcome to 1979 and Mara Machines, and this is Dustin Blocker, who owns Hand
Yep.
Drawn
So
Pressing.
hand-drawn records and hand-drawn pressing. So yeah, hand-drawn records, an independent record label based out of North Texas, and hand-drawn pressing, which is our own record pressing plant in Addison, which is North Dallas.
Okay. So what is Hand Drawing Pressing all about?
Yeah. So really, it's an artist solutions based company. So my business partner Alex Cushing and I, we started it 2014. We actually started brokering vinyl to kind of learn the game. And then in January of 17, we launched with the first new record presses at that time in the world. It had been 35 years since the newer record press had been made. So it was right around the time that Welcome 1979, you guys got into the cutting and plating game, or at least the plating side. So it was very fortuitous right off the bat. We kind of had a pretty big segment of the chain in one room together in Dallas, and you guys in Nashville. So you guys are, of course, the cutting and plating, and then we do the actual physical pressing of the record.
Okay. Yeah, and here's a picture of Alex right here.
There he
So
is, the
yeah,
Cush.
holding a stamper, which we'll talk about.
Yeah,
So you guys handle record pressing,
yeah.
and what talk about some of the projects you've worked on.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we do a lot of regional projects. So a lot of Texas-based guys, and then of course a lot of Nashville. And yeah, so it's really Southwest-based stuff. Let's think. Usually the easier is trying to remember with my short-term memory, kind of the newer newer projects. Yeah, we just finished the new American Aquarium,
Yeah.
Lamentations. That's super cool. Been listening to
Mhm.
that one quite a bit. And we've been doing a lot of their catalog stuff too, which is really neat. So just really it's fun when you're doing press on something like that where you're hearing an artist from the same artist from 10 years ago, and you're making all the records. You get to literally hear them almost in a row and kind of hear the
Yeah.
maturation of the band. So those have been pretty cool. We just finished Big Steve Earle, Ghosts of West Virginia. That's a new
Mhm.
one. The other big one that seems to be on the press all the time is all the Lumineers stuff. So we do a lot
Yep.
of Lumineers, which is awesome.
Mhm.
Uh, I wasn't really even a fan of those guys, kind of a sidebar, until we started pressing them, and now I love Cleopatra. Whole side A is killer, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it's fun. You just find new artists, and then those are kind of the bigger guys, but tons and tons of local guys: Joshua Ray Walker, Cutthroat Finches,
Mhm.
Taylor Young Band, Heart of the City. So yeah, we do all kinds of fun stuff. Keep it local and keeping it small, right?
Yeah, and I always have to ask what we can talk about because, like, I was there a few months ago, and the record we were working on was like a super top secret one. I think there's always two or three of those floating around, with the
Yeah,
surprise records and all that. So
yeah, exactly
always
right.
ask because you can't unsay something. And
Yeah, that's our rule of thumb. I think it's the same with you guys, Chris. Is
yeah,
like, yeah, we're not. It's not our record to talk about. So
yeah,
if they talk about it first, and then they happen to say, "Hey, Hand Run did it," yeah, love it. We'll jump on and say, "Yeah, we did that. That's awesome. Thanks for saying something." But for
yeah.
the most part, yeah, we don't promote the albums that we work on. They're not ours to promote, unless
Yeah,
they're our artists, right?
exactly. So, but for those of you watching, it's safe to say there's stuff on the press right now that you're aware of and are waiting for,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
exactly right. Yeah,
yeah. And the Lumineers catalog has been great. We've gotten to work on that with you guys. We've done the 1, 2, and 3.
yep,
They're all great records.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And
And, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say something just that popped in my mind about that. The last one, which came out last summer, and they were going to do the big tours for it this year, Lumineers. It was just called Lumineers 3. What's pretty fun when you listen to that, there's a lot of Easter eggs in the lyrics. So There's literally like bridges and parts of songs that come in on 3 that they had seeded in on the second album called Cleopatra, not in that track, but in different tracks. And it's just, like I said, it's fun finding those kinds of things. I don't know how many bands do that. I think you have to have a pretty big catalog to be able to do fun stuff like that, but it's inspiring for sure.
That's cool. Well, and like you said, you work with the big artists, but your doors are open to indie bands and, just anyone who wants vinyl, right?
Yeah. So that's how we started. So I was in a local rock band for almost 20 years. I was a singer, and we stopped a few years ago. But that's how I got into the game. Was always working with local artists, which benefited my band at the time. And then we just kind of what Hand Drawn was originally was Hand Drawn Records, which I started in 2011. Was just a small label that was artists helping each other. So booking shows, promoting shows, building websites, finding merch, getting discounts like that, kind of tying people together. And that's what we started as. And so the pressing side is just the outbirth of those kind of community ideas. So it is fun to work on the big ones because they allows us as a small company to run longer hours and employ more people. But yeah, hard as always with the smaller guys. And I mentioned one, Joshua Ray Walker. It's crazy that guy's all over the place now, but still pretty small regional artist. And I randomly saw somebody out yesterday in my neighborhood in Granbury, Texas, which is like 90 miles outside of the DFW. And they were like, "Hey, have you heard of this guy, Joshua Ray Walker?" And it's fun. I'm like, "Yeah, man, we do his records." So it's cool. The what I like to say, the smaller guys is kind of where our heart is. So because that's who we are. So
yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about the overview of pressing, because just for those of you just jumping in now, and any questions, just throw them out there as you think of them. We've already done Facebook Lives on mastering, and which is a photo here, vinyl mastering, which is the first step of making a vinyl record. And then we did one on, I've got to dig through the photos, electroplating, which is the second step. And then now we're at pressing, which is Dustin's specialty. Here's a little shot of your team. So talk to me about kind of some nuts and bolts about Hand Drawn. What kind of equipment? How much of the equipment do you have?
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, so that photo that was Alex, who we mentioned earlier, and John, which is one of the owners as well. So Alex, John, and myself own the company, and then we employ a small team. It's kind of fluxed over time, but the largest our team ever was like 12 people, and right now there's 8 of us. So during these quarantine times, it's been a little crazy. But yeah, we use, as I alluded to, the first new record presses in the world. So we launched from in January 17. We kind of were the guinea pigs for the new presses. They're called Warm Tones out of Canada. So yeah, the record pressing has not changed in 60 years as far as extruding plastic and the way stampers like you guys make, molding of the plastic and the trimming of the plastic to make a circle. What has changed in steam and compression molding to make a vinyl record, what has changed on these new presses is it's a computer for a brain. So it's regulating all the temperatures. It's regulating the temperatures and the pressures, and there's a little bit of robotics on the back end that actually are arms that grab the finished records and take them to cooling stacks. But for all intents and purposes, it's it's old tech made in a new way. It's highly efficient, super clean. So yeah, efficiency again is good for a small company, right? Not a lot of waste. And we do standard records. We don't do manual press. We do all automatic pressing. So we'll do mostly black records, and then a pretty healthy portion of custom colors, swirls, and marbling. But if you're familiar with vinyl records, we don't do picture discs, and we don't do what are called hand splatters. That's really about it. Beyond that, that's what we make. We don't do 7-inch or 10-inch. We just make all 12-inch.
Yeah. So here's a picture of like cool red.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you guys have some cool colors, and you've got that. You showed me when I was there, that kind of like layered color. What do you guys call that again?
Yeah, so custom blends. So like hold up your fingernails. I just saw that. We could make that. If you want to send a picture of your fingernails, your fingernail paint in there.
Yeah.
We could make that. There might be a little more swirl than the lacquer would be on your finger there, but
Yeah.
yeah, we do a lot of color matching. So most of the time what that means is an artist has a particular color on an album, on the jacket, and they say, hey, can you match this red or whatever? And we typically can hit them spot on. There'll be some variances in those custom blends because it's not a perfect science the way that the plastic melts throughout the process. So record one's not going to be the same as record 500, but overall the variance is going to be pretty tight. And we can get those pretty spot on. So, but yeah, custom blends, color matching, and then the swirling, which more akin to a marbling, like a marble countertop. So if you want a white with some black in it, and you want to have some light marbling, that's a pretty healthy thing that we do. Here, I have one sitting here actually. Yeah, you can kind of see you see that on there.
Oh yeah.
So it's a tan. It's probably not coming through too well on here. It's a little more white off the light of the above me, but it's more of a tan, and it has, let's see, purples, yellows, pinks, and reds all kind of scattered through it. So it looks a lot like a splatter, but it's not a splatter. It's a little more marbled.
Cool. Well, here's a great question, kind of right on point. Jeff wants to know, what's the noisiest color you found to press on?
Yeah. So what's funny, when we first started, that was the big thing, was there was a lot of noisy PVC out there. And clears are usually like a completely clear, which is a translucent or a translucent base of any kind, like that red you showed just a second ago, would in the past be very noisy. The PVC has stepped up its game quite a bit in the last few years. So since we've been pressing for the last 3 years, our provider, that red right there sounds exactly the same as the black. And a completely clear record, which looks like glass, you can see completely through it, sounds the same. I mean, there might be a little bit of a difference in the tolerance on the clear, but it's so tight to maybe an untrained ear, it's negligible. And that's really what the guys on PVC say, is it's all about the pigments. So the best way it was explained to me is kind of like car paint. Car paint is better now than it was 10 years ago, and better than it was 20 years ago. It's because they can reduce those pigments finer than they used to be able to. So since they can grind them up on a record, that needle is traveling through. If it's not a fine pigment, it's actually looks like it's bouncing on sand almost. So the finer the pigment is, it passes through much quieter. So really, yeah, I would put up any color next to a black, and it's the same.
Wow. See, I didn't know that. I would have answered Jeff's question differently based on what I know. I tend to tell people, if you're really concerned about fidelity, go with black, and then there's kind of everything else, because you can start getting that splatter, and it will be, it's more of a piece of art than audiophile. But it's good to know that the colors are really coming on strong then.
Yeah, it is interesting. So I think a lot of times, and that was a thing in my mind too, you thought it would need to have surface noise to sound like a record, the pop and crack. It's going to have some sound to it when you first drop the needle. It's really, there's so many other variations, and the PVC can be one of them. It just has seemed like in the last couple of years it hasn't been, oddly. And even more odd than that is a regrind. Most of the time sounds better than virgin.
And that's the recycled, because the record gets trimmed, so you've got excess. So instead of just putting it in a landfill, you grind it back and work it back in.
That's correct. And so we do, most of what we do is virgin, because the amount of regrind you have compared to the virgin you have is much higher, right? So you do like a 3-to-1, sometimes a 5-to-1 blend, meaning you basically have 2 huge hoppers that are 1 ton apiece, and they're sucking into the presses, right? The PVC is sucking in the raw material. And so we'll transfer from that virgin over to the regrind. Sometimes if we're having a noisy, our techs are having an issue with the noise floor, they'll try regrind, and most of the time it actually sounds better. It's crazy. And we used to think the same thing, like after 3 regrinds, it's going to lose fidelity, it's going to get worse. And so we've been, really working with everybody through North America, and picking everybody's brain has been pressing for 40 years, 50 years. And some of them say that you just keep using regrind until it's gone. And that's actually the best rule of thumb. So, it's not always going to be a pure regrind, but you might use pieces of the same, flash or a punched record, up to 5-6 times possibly, in a large batch, and you won't hear anything different.
Well, and I've learned a lot about the PVC compound through Casey at TPC.
Yep.
We're pretty good buddies, and I've looked. I like to get nerdy. I've looked under a microscope at these pigments and kind of he explained to me why they're refining them and all that. And the regrind too, it's more about the care of your scrap vinyl than anything else. If you just throw it on the floor and sweep it up, then all those contaminants get in there.
That's right.
Which is the problem, not so much the regrind itself. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And then, I'm sure you keep your colors separate and all that. And,
yep.
and so that's a great thing.
And the other thing in the marbling, so there's all these different compounds. You have your straight colors, your translucents, your opaques, your blacks, etc. When you do your color match, that is a very specific compound that goes with a different blend, right? Let's say you have a clear, and then you add this blue compound, like a tiny amount. I'm talking, you have 3 bags to 10 grams or whatever, right? It's insane, and it'll make these blues or reds or whatever color you're trying to match. That can't be reground in the same way and has to be separated, as you just said, because it will actually interfere. It's so potent, it'll interfere with the other colors later. So if you just try to mask it with black in a regrind bin, you get these crazy streaks going on. The same thing with the swirl. So you have to, you absolutely have to keep those separated.
Yeah, cool. So then what's your blend, pardon the pun, of like multicolor records and standard black? What do you find?
I think last year we pulled out the numbers. I think it was pretty high, actually. It was about 25, almost 25% of the business was color, which to us was pretty healthy. I mean, we'd rather, as a small plant, we'd rather run black all day. Changeover and downtime costs a lot of money, and that's beyond the compound costing more, which it does to do colored records. The stopping of a press, cleaning of every piece of the press. I mean, it's a couple hours to reset up a new job. So you lose all that time. You could be making more black records to make a custom color. So it costs us more to make it, and it costs us more, of course, in the raw goods too. But you're right. You said it earlier. It's a work of art. So we don't want to shy away and turn away custom blends. You got to be smart on when you run them compared to, putting your shifts together as a pressing operation just to run straight black.
Right. Well, it's nice for artists to have the conversation because, if they want a hot pink record that sticks out and maybe is a theme to it, that's great. But a lot of artists are on a budget, so they can at least see what the color versus black costs and make a decision. Yeah, and it's nice to have that be the artist's decision too.
Absolutely.
And in the artwork too, it's a lot of fun because we work a lot on the music side, and sometimes these records kind of unfold to be more music than can be on an A and a B side, but not enough for an A, B, C, and D. So we come up with these cool etchings for people, you know?
Yeah.
And now you get into this real artwork where the other side of that record has music on it, and nothing's to waste. So why not do a cool etching like that, or, part of your artwork, and, so
that's real fun.
Yeah.
That's the Cody Jinx. Yeah. That's one of that was like one of the first ones we did with you guys. And Dan does some amazing work. And we do, I think, that kind of opens the door. You're exactly right, to all kinds of playable art, and it's cool stuff for the wall. And we'll regularly get now. That's a good example. That's probably the most common, Chris, is, it's a 3-sided LP basically. So what do you do with the last side? You could just leave it blank, and that's okay too. But what we've seen now, the 7-inch market, and now it's popular. It's still popular, but you can't sell them for as much, and they basically cost as much to manufacture a 7-inch as a 12-inch.
Mm-hmm.
And so we regularly sell it in and go, look, put all your music on one side instead of doing 2 songs per side. Do 4 songs on one side, do an etch on the other, and then you get to sell it for that. Because talk about something that's cooler as a merch item, I think that's way cooler.
Yeah, and 12s are easier to kind of get into the distribution chain and all that kind of stuff too for stores.
Yeah, they stand out on the shelf and stuff, put to the back bin, right?
Yep. So here's some questions from people. Let's just kind of cycle these in. So Bob wants to know, sorry for the newbie question. First, don't ever apologize about any questions whatsoever. We're all new to it or have been at one time, right?
Absolutely.
Everyone pressed their first record once. Working with this first client who wants to release on vinyl along with digital. What are some good tips for mixing for both? What I would recommend doing is just mixing the record, and not think about vinyl or digital at that point, and then talk with your vinyl mastering engineer, such as us, who can master it for both a digital release, CD, or streaming, and vinyl. So sometimes what we'll recommend is talking with you about song order is more important on vinyl than more so like a mixing technique. And then the length of the music per side of a record is the more important thing. So sometimes the vinyl release will be different than the CD release based on that. But a conversation with your mastering engineer who's very familiar with vinyl is kind of crucial at that stage. Chris wants to know, this is another really good question. What if we already have tracks mastered for digital? Can you take those tracks and press for vinyl? Or do we need to try to acquire the tracks pre-mastered? Dustin, you want to handle that one? Because you handle, people send you WAV files and stuff all the time.
Yeah. So the best way it's explained, and Chris, you can jump in and of course being the expert, but yeah, so when you hear about mastering on vinyl, I think that's the biggest trick. Is you hear the word mastering, and we use it too. That's that we actually were referring to the cutting engineer, the master cut of the record on a lacquer. So what we tell our clients is the digital pre-master for that, and we just request that it's left non-compressed or as uncompressed as possible, so it's wide open for the cutting engineer, the mastering engineer, to be able to do their job. So usually the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, we can cut anything. We can take your digital master ones, kind of back it down and remaster for vinyl, but it's always easier to get the pre-mastered ones and just really make it the best for vinyl. And what we're doing now, we talked with Andron about this, is we're actually taking those and printing them on tape now as part of our mastering process. Since I'm a recording engineer and expert in tape and all that, it dawned on me one day that, vinyl was made before digital. So a lot of the stuff we do in the vinyl mastering to make it cut better, tape would have done anyway. So for the next month, we're just working that into our vinyl mastering package for free, so you get even a more analog record. So just hit us up for more information about that. So Jeff wants to know, how many pressings on one stamper until you start getting fidelity loss? Does that depend on weight?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's great. That's great. So we recommend it's usually 1,000 pressings on one stamper. That said, a stamper can last 10. It can last 1,500. Usually, the fidelity loss. What we really do is even if the stamper is running perfectly at 1,200 and there's no issue, we're shutting it down. We're changing stampers, regardless. And that's because it's not really that the stamper is going to lose fidelity. What's probably going to end up happening is something will get into the press, some kind of dust, some kind of fine particle, and it'll start making divots. And that's what really our techs have seen over a long period of time. And in these tiny microscopic divots will cause little pops. It makes a needle jump, basically. Usually it won't jump a whole track or anything like that, but it'll actually roll into those divots and cause some surface noise. And we try to release, zero surface noise constantly. That's our biggest goal is no surface noise, no skips, no pops, no jumps. So the rule of thumb is 1,000, but it does vary by stamper. The stampers actually literally get destroyed during the pressing process. So they're very strong, but at the same time, the press is much stronger. That's right. Easy way to think about it.
Well, and they're made to break. I mean, if something should happen, that stamper is a consumable, So Dustin, when you pull them off at 1,200 copies, you're doing that as a preventative maintenance.
You got it right.
Yeah. Okay. We've gotten enough out of this. Why push it?
Yeah, and we order them all in advance. So When we do any kind of invoicing and billing, we try to make it a one-stop. So we charge on the behalf of the printers and we charge on behalf of 79. And we just do it all pass through. So if it's 2,000 units, we order those 2 sets of stampers in advance. So the client's paying for them already. So we're not going to sit on them. And they don't do me any good to have them sit in a bin that never got used. So you're exactly right. The consumable, the prepaid, let's go. Make the highest quality possible.
Makes sense. And Joel wants to know, Dustin, how many records do you press in a month or a year?
Yeah, great question. So typically 10 to 15,000 a week, which rolls out to about 750,000 a year. That's just 5 days a week. The target's always about 1 million. That just puts more weekends and longer shifts through the night. But that's a typical 14, 16-hour workday, which is what our work week is. Again, before COVID slowed us all down. But yeah, it's starting to open back up in Dallas and Texas. So, and we've been able to work through. Thankfully, been able to keep our guys employed during this time period, which has been a blessing. And there's been a lot of slowdown in number of orders, but that's about 80 to 90% drop off in the early weeks, and which hit us really hard. But then these last couple of weeks have started to pick up. So
yeah, I think people are
normalize again.
Yeah, we're seeing that already too through you guys. Couple more questions to fire off. This is awesome. Keep them coming, guys.
Yeah.
So follow up on mastering. So 6 TB is what you want to send us, or minus 6 TB. We did a whole Facebook Live on vinyl mastering, so check that one out too. I'll answer it the best I can. Just send them whatever level you have, and we always adjust it anyway. So don't overthink it. I always tell people, just make it sound really good, and we'll do the rest. There's no exact number because every record, believe it or not, has a different volume based on how long the music is, and that's something I didn't realize. I'm an avid vinyl record collector, and I didn't realize that until we started doing vinyl mastering. And I went back and started pulling these records. I'm like, they're all different levels. So there is no set number at all. Bob's got a follow-up. Years ago, I was taught that if you keep bass frequencies really compressed in the mix, vinyl is going to be an option. Is this still true? Or leave that in the hands of a mastering engineer? I would totally just leave that in the hands of a vinyl mastering engineer. It's really hard to understand what the vinyl mastering lathe is going to do with music until you're actually seeing it react to the music. I've listened to music before prior to mastering it with the lathe, thinking, "Oh, this is gonna be a problem. This should be this. This should be this." And I see the lathe react, and I was wrong. So we part of our vinyl mastering that you get through hand drawn, if you just order right through them, we'll talk about that more later. That includes a couple hours of us maximizing your music for the vinyl format. So if you guys guess and just try to pre-master it, you may do things that we can't undo. We can always compress it. We can't uncompress it, right? Kevin from Lost Cause. Hey, man. I haven't heard that in a while. Jeff's got a question for you, Dustin. He wants to know if he can visit during pressing.
Yeah. So our clients, we're not open to the public. We're a closed facility for security reasons, of course. With the masters that are in there, that's a pretty standard thing. But yeah, we regularly open up to our clients and to artists. It doesn't matter like size. You don't have to like put in some massive order to come visit us, But yeah, we regularly host artists, sometimes several times a day, and love to show them around. And some artists even come and sign their jackets in person because we have them all shipped direct to us. If they're local, they'll come and pick up test presses and all that. Again, this was all pre-COVID, and I'm sure it'll go back to normal here pretty quick, so we can have more people in the facility. But yes was the long answer.
Well, yeah, I was going through your Facebook page, and there's tons of photos of artists near the press with their records, and I think that's a big part of getting records pressed locally or in the U.S., where you know who's working on your records, and you can stop in and and see how they're handcrafted. You
That's
know,
right.
we give tours of our facility all the time, and we're electroplating. I mean, who wants to see nickel being put onto a substrate? Um, but it's music, and it's fascinating, so people want to see it. Well, speaking of people stopping by and knowing more about the process, you're heavily involved with a new organization called Verma. What is that all about, and why should independent artists care?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the VRMA, Verma. So it's a really a real creative term, but it's Vinyl Record Manufacturers Association, and the back part of that is of North America. So really going back to why it was founded and why it came about. Really what's happening is Europe is trying to eat up a ton of North American business in the vinyl space specifically. And they do that by having the entire chain in house, meaning they do the cutting and the plating and the PVC and the jackets. And so then they can offer it at a kind of really the best way to say it is a cutthroat rate. Not really a living wage for anybody that would be here in America, which puts a lot of pressure on North America manufacturing in general. But beyond them, and I understand they're the bad guys, but that's the outside pressure that's coming in. And really, North America is made up of tons and tons of independent cutting houses, plating houses, pressing plants, just like it is with all the studio worlds, right? Not these huge studios that artists go into. It's really kind of small businesses that supply every piece of this chain. And so what VRMA is about is supporting that, getting everybody collectively together to really put our stamp on as far as quality goes, but also education out to the consumer to know, hey, is my stuff being made in Europe? I didn't even know. The
Yeah.
company said America. Well, it was a broker, right? Which is again not a bad guy, but they're brokering for the cheapest price so they can pay their staff, and they're going to broker it overseas most of the time. So if you tell those brokers where you want it pressed, you can actually get it made in America. Lo and behold. Really, that's kind of the big deal is how do we talk more about who is in North America, who's really kind of at every level, who's your local pressing plant, who's your local cutter, who's your local plating facility, and really champion those guys. And really what outbursts out of that is not just the care and quality of your final product, but you said it perfectly, Chris. It's knowing the people that are making your dream or your art or your craft kind of come to life on the vinyl side. So that's what really VRMA is about is really kind of putting a stake in the ground and saying, hey, let's make it in America. Here's all the great folks that do it, and then when it gets to really big jobs too, there's a really big opportunity to share jobs. I mean, there's been some massive jobs we've lost to overseas, and our plant included in that. That I wish I could go back in time and have this association that we have now to come back and reel them in and say, look, we could actually spread this out across 10 different plants in North America and get your job done for you. And everybody in our supply chain would be able to benefit from that. So.
We'll back up a step because you kind of said something that a lot of people might not be aware of. So if I was looking to get a vinyl record pressed and found a company here in the U.S. to price that for me, just because that company is in the U.S. doesn't mean the records are going to get pressed in the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. So, it makes sense. If I was going to broker anything, I would look for price first. If that was my business model. So what'll happen is exactly right. They can source it wherever they want, and most of those brokers, especially the larger brokers, have really kind of capacity agreements, what they would call capacity agreements, with larger plants in Europe that are able to they can just get it the cheapest price and air freight it or ship it by boat, which is not efficient at all, of course, either. And then hit these price points. It's funny though. There's a lot of hidden costs when it comes to all that stuff because it is international shipping. There's a lot of time if there's any kind of issue with your project as far as audio not being signed off or jackets not being the right color or right finish. By the way, you have to go back to overseas to get it. And yeah, so that's exactly what happens. It happens every day. So really, it's again, it's not to demonize who's doing it. But if you do talk to those, if you are getting a broker job, going to somebody that doesn't physically have a record pressing plant, then what you should do as an informed consumer is ask, hey, what plant is this being done at? And then request what plant you want it at. And there's a great list of regional plants. There's a great website. I think it's something simple. It's like vinylpressingplants.com that literally has everybody listed in the world.
And there's a lot in the US, you know, and they're all small businesses. You know, like
exactly right.
I visit you guys every few months. I mean, you've got guitar players that work for you, then they're in bands, and man, and there's a singer that works for you and all this kind of stuff. So you're supporting, you know, if you're in a band and you hire a US plant, like I've got guitar players and musicians that work for us, obviously, right? So you're supporting your peers, right? And I always think, you know, if you're in a independent band, you care about where your guitar comes from. Most people have cool custom amps when they can. They're playing small clubs, which are small businesses, you know. And then your record will ultimately be in a record store, which is a small business. And then, like, why stop caring about the whole thing when it comes to where your record is pressed?
Exactly right. And that's just, the knowledge. You don't know.
You know who mixed your record, you know who mastered it, and then like, oh, I don't know who did the rest of it.
Yeah.
You know? Because the sound of your record can still be greatly affected after you're done with it, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not just the cutting and plating, the pressing that you spoke about earlier, just the cleanliness of the PVC, what kind of compounds being used, what kind of settings are being used in the press. We can definitely affect audio on our side. So any pressing plant that just, you know, says, hey, it's not our fault, you got to really look at it, because there's all kinds of pieces throughout the chain that can affect the sound of a disc. We're just making circles that in play. It'd be very easy.
Yeah, and I got a little slide here I'll show everyone where this is how I like to phrase it. It's like, you know, quality can drop and it will never go back up. So if you spend a lot of money on mastering for your digital audio and send it somewhere, and then once that quality drops down, it can't come back up. So you really have to kind of know who's doing the whole thing. Man, we got a lot more questions. Let's jump back into those.
Cool. Yeah.
So Mike says, hey, thanks for all the work with 79 and hand drawn on the new Edgar Derby record.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey,
Yeah.
what's up, Mike?
Yeah.
It's funny. Mike always called you Edgar. You Edgar or Mike? Which one?
Yeah.
I like
so,
yeah.
Case in point, Dustin, who owns Hand Drawing Records, knows who that artist is, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Joel has a question. Has a Transco Apollo fire affected business? So for those of you who don't know, in early February, one of the two lacquer manufacturers in the world burned to the ground, and a master lacquer is needed to make the master for vinyl records. Has it affected business, Dustin? I mean,
not on our end. I mean, we do all our stuff through you guys. So as long as it's not affecting you, it's not affecting us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we do have jobs that other lacquers come into you guys to get plated, and we do.
Yep.
Some other jobs go through other plating facilities. If like the artist or management or whatever kind of decides that. But yeah, you guys weren't using Apollo anyways.
No, hadn't for years. So luckily we were unaffected. We had a supply of MDCs, which were made in Japan. So we weren't affected by that. Unfortunately, it did affect a lot of people, but not our little ecosystem. So
yeah, and we'll see what all comes out of that. You know, I think it's interesting. I mean, this pandemic came right after that, and really all the plants and everybody in VRMA and you guys and all of us, we were all just like calling each other like crazy. Like, how do we solve this lacquer issue? What's the long-term effects? What's the long-term look like? What's the short-term look like? And then the pandemic kind of wiped a lot of that away by crushing business, by killing his business for a while. So now I think is the lacquer business affected? Conversation is probably going to start back up pretty soon.
Yeah. Oh, here's Mike. So that's Edgar's a stage name.
Okay.
So that's all cool. And yeah, Mike also says he had a great compliments every aspect of the first record, and then they did. And can't wait to know. It's awesome. So here's a pretty.
That's cool. I wish we could.
Yeah,
I wish we did like some companies do, where you send out like a review us on Google. I think we'd have a lot of good reviews. It seems like.
yeah,
I'm sure
totally.
some people don't like us though. I mean, that happens with every business. But I'd say for the most part, we're gonna get a 4 maybe. Let's get a 4 on Google. Maybe
Well,
four
and
and a half.
we talked a bit too, kind of on we did our own Facebook Live on how to get records pressed. And one thing we like to talk to people too is it is manufacturing, and if you have to get a second round of test pressings, that's not a failure. No one really like made a huge mistake. It's a pop, which is a small piece of dust that no one put in there on purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's kind of part of the process, and don't get super inflamed by it. We'll get through it, and that happens on every fifth or seventh or 10th project. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So it's not directly correlated to workmanship. You know?
Yeah,
Um,
there's literally no way to know until
yeah.
the test press has been ran. And then the second piece of that is how many hours in the day and how big of a rush and how many are you doing in that day and how many did you listen the entire after you made the test presses, every copy all the way through. There's just not enough hours in the day. So a lot of times what will happen on test press, I'll speak to that kind of quickly. So our technicians, they'll get in the stampers, they go into a test press queue, which is different than the production queue. So it's run on different days, et cetera. They then do their quality testing. They have to basically skip through quickly the record to make sure there's nothing apparent, like, and there's no visual marks or some big mark they know will make a noise that shouldn't be there. And then they'll run them. And then we have a second pair of eyes and ears that have to then go back through and check. And then they don't check every copy they're going to ship out, but they do check one all the way through, which is, it could be 45 minutes on one disc. A double could be an hour and a half almost. And then they ship those out to the client. Now the client then gets them, and a lot of it actually depends on their playback system. Are they playing it back on, kind of a system that maybe the tone arm's not set up all the right way, or maybe it's just a little bit cheaper than the system that we have. We have a few systems at the plant, but that we have there that we tested on. And so because of that, you're going to get variances. So sometimes it's a playback issue, sometimes it's an actual disc issue. So we try to have a one sheet in there that says, here's all things you're listening for, and here's what you're approving. And then if there's any issue at all, what we do is we go through a lot, and you guys do it too. We go listen, please tell us exactly what track and where, so we can just spot check listen, right? We do that on the house copies that we keep. And then if the problem still persists and we can't find it, we then go back to your team, and you guys go back and pull the mothers and have to do a listen, which I know is labor intensive on y'all's end, just to find maybe a slight pop that could or couldn't be there. So it's a lot. It's a lot when a test press doesn't get approved, and we take it very seriously. I know you guys take it very seriously, and a lot of cutting houses do. And yeah, it's an important stage for sure. And everybody forever has been saying, how do we get rid of the test press phase and just digitally send a file? I wish we could, but at the same time, I don't think it doesn't make any sense. It's a fragile medium, and you need to listen to it on vinyl to know what you're getting.
Yeah, and I think overall, a lot more is expected out of a vinyl record now, fidelity-wise. I talked to older gentlemen, in the industry, and Nashville is great for that kind of first-hand knowledge. And I keep hearing the same thing, that back in the 70s, test pressing were only to make sure the right music was on the record,
Right.
But now I think standards in general are higher when it comes to music. A couple more questions here. This is a good one. Pamela wants to know if we can talk a little bit about the pros and cons of direct metal mastering versus lacquer. So that's a great question. And for those who don't know, most of the time there is a lacquer involved. This lathe is ours, and it uses master lacquers to cut on, and then that goes into electroplating, right? So the lacquer gets silvered and plated. And in the late 70s, early 80s, they came up with direct metal mastering, which skips the lacquer. So the lathe was modified, and they made a couple new versions that could cut right onto a copper disc that went right into electroplating, and you're making stampers right away. So from a manufacturing standpoint, it's brilliant. From a sonic standpoint, they did a lot of tests back then, and like a lot of things that are better, quote unquote, the sound wasn't retained. Um, the the high frequencies are more accurate, which some people say is more brittle sounding. But I think fundamentally there isn't any direct metal mastering in the U.S. And when it is used, it's more automated and more of a manufacturing thing. When you have somebody with a lathe with a lacquer, they are mastering your music for vinyl. They're more involved with the process, generally speaking, and your outcome is going to be different from a direct metal mastering lathe at a pressing plant as part of manufacturing. Does that sum it up, Dustin? Kind of,
Right.
it's two different schools of thought, you know.
Yeah, yeah. That's exactly, you hit it all.
Yeah, because I don't think there's a direct metal mastering lathe in the U.S.
Right. The
Yeah,
Scientologists have them all,
right. Yeah, for public consumption.
which is true. They really do. It seems crazy, but that's a true statement.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Ryan says, I've seen other plants in this world. Hand drawing out produces just about anyone. Well, thanks, Ryan.
Ha.
That's awesome.
Hey, yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Disclaimer there. Ryan used to work for us. He's right. He's right. He knows it because he was there every day, all day. We wouldn't let him leave.
Sweet.
But he's since moved on, and he's doing really well. I think he's been overseas for a long time doing some cool work. So
Cool. So Joel wants to know, is VMA Verma officially running? Is there a website? It's a great question, Joel.
yeah. So Chris, your wife is on the what's the committee that gets out the word, right? So I think that's something
Yep.
that they have in the works.
Right.
But
So
to answer it, yeah, I mean the bylaws and all that have all the drafts have been done, and it's a long process when you're setting up a big organization. As far as it's not just a small company. It's a collaborative association of there's like 70 people on the list. So it's a much larger thing than that. But so it takes a long time, a lot of moving parts. But yeah, a lot of it's official and it's real. No website, no outward facing materials yet.
yeah, but even this is part of it. We got together and wanted to do some education. So Yoli, my wife, and I did a talk in Minneapolis about education and just basically my involvement with Verma is educating artists on where the records get pressed. I'm all for informed decisions. If you say, look, I just for some reason want to get this pressed overseas versus I had no idea that's where my record's being pressed. Those are two different things. So
Absolutely.
Jeff wants to know, how do you handle warping? Is it based on weight?
Yeah, that's good. So Jeff, yeah. So to answer that, 180 is less likely to warp than a 140, which is what our standard weight is. Some plants still are doing like 125 will be their standard, and then 140 is an upgrade. 180 is an upgrade above that. Back in if you buy a lot of older discs, like in the mid 70s, early 70s, when they were chunking out, that was the one medium they did. I mean, they were down 90, 100 grams. So they were like really light Frisbees almost is kind of the way to think of it. And those warp very, very quickly. Those are ones that are in your mom's attic, and they're definitely warped if they sat the wrong way for all those years. So yeah, weight is a big contributor to that. The way it actually works, though, and the way it's been explained to me, once vinyl, the way it cools in the press, when it gets formed in that 30-second process, that's basically the way it's always going to want to go back to. So it's a material that has memory, is a way to think of it. So the vinyl material has memory, and it'll go back to the way it was first pressed or first formed. And there's my dog in the background.
Oh, that's awesome.
Hey, he's tall enough to make it on camera on the laptop. As you can see, I'm at home. Yeah. But yes,
Cool.
warping weight. Yes.
Yeah. And I would say most of the time a record gets warped in shipping, especially in the summer. We get, we're heavily involved with the test pressing phase, and we get questions. It's like, hey, this is warped. It's like, well, it probably got left on your doorstep or something like that. So, here's a good.
It could also be the box it was shipped in. If it gets packed too tightly with certain kinds of shrink wrap, yeah. So that's all stages of QC that we thankfully have a really like our packing team is a separate whole separate section. That's all they look for is the way the heat of the shrink tunnel and how tight the material is on that, and how tight the gatefold is versus a non-gatefold. I mean, there's a lot that can warp a record, but rule of thumb, yeah, the little thicker, the better, less warping is possible. But still happens. Well, and we've shipped y'all, Chris, is like, hey, we did a test press, somebody didn't like it. Hey, ship us the test press, we'll ship it to you. And the shipping package we used was one that we thought was good. It looked padded, it looked great. And you guys would get them and send us videos of them, and they would look like a sombrero.
Yeah.
Like, this was a perfect record, 24 hours ago, 48 hours. And so we had to change all the way that they were shipped out and how it was handled. And
I heard somebody say at a conference when talking about warp records, it's like, we're not shipping warp records.
Yeah, we said it to you, said, screw you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I heard that. I'm like, that makes total sense,
Yeah.
And I was going to say this earlier. Anytime you can get a tour of vinyl mastering or electroplating from us or from a pressing plant, take the tour, because I hear it time and time again. It's like, wow, so much goes into this. I'm so impressed of the process, and then it just gives you an idea of all the steps involved. And not that you'll accept mistakes, but you understand a better expectation of what should happen. This isn't like, no humans touching, thumb drives hooked up and stuff just comes out. It's really handcrafted, and it's amazing,
Yeah, and Chris, you said it one time. I think it was you quantified it was like 130 or 150 steps in each record.
Yeah,
and of that, think about it. I mean, that's usually sometimes a couple dozen people that do those different steps. So it's not just like one person that has 150 steps. I mean, that's multiple people in different parts of the country, and all like one perfect record.
I was going to get little murals painted around our electroplating shop for tours. So it's like this. And by the time we got all the steps laid out, it was going to be like 10 grand for a mural. I'm like, no.
Just for electroplating.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's just our shop,
Yeah.
So Joel has a great question. What's your favorite part of the pressing business and the least favorite?
Yeah, my favorite is dealing with the artists, definitely. And actually, it's pretty amazing. I mean, the management and the labels, and I think everybody that's in vinyl really does, or even makes it, or they sell it, or whatever. They're so respectful of the format. So it's everybody's very kind, everybody's very understanding. So yeah, the best part is definitely doing on the front line, because that's what I do. So I'm one of the owners, but I actually try to talk to everybody. I try to stay off the phone as much as possible. It's like a weird thing with me, but definitely emails like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So least favorite?
Yeah.
That said, I mean, no. I guess the least favorite, I like challenges, so that's hard for me. I like it when things don't go right, because it kind of pushes me harder personally. But I guess it could be the projects where you lose your cool, or like the client loses their cool, and you got to try to inform them, and they don't care about the answers, and so that's tough. I guess so. It's a catch-22, right? People and people.
Yeah.
Best and least, right?
Yeah. Assuming that was for both of us, Joel, I'll answer too. My favorite part is, when an artist, like, because a lot of times they'll come over to the studio, or they'll call or email when they got the test pressing with their record. And there's very few products that people will buy that they'll like jump on Facebook Live and do a video of them opening it up. And records are one of those. And usually the bands I work with as a recording engineer producer, they might only do 3 or 4 vinyl record releases in their career. So each one is huge, and just having that, that physical, it's such a milestone in their career, right? So being part of that is great. I think my least favorite part is when I talk to people who, at the vinyl stage, are super, in my opinion, price conscious, where we'll lose a mastering gig over $50. And that's frustrating, because as a recording engineer, I know that person played the right guitar with the right strings on it through the right amp with the right mic. You know what I mean? And then kind of at the end, they just ran out of steam and said, well, for $50, I'm going to, and I think they just don't understand how much every step matters still. And I can see $1,000, because I know what money is, but when it gets down to $50, that's my least favorite part, and I'm paying my staff as well as I can, so I don't budge on my price. So that's my thing. So, but there's definitely a lot more favorites than least favorite. That's the only thing I could think of. So here's one for you, Dustin. What's the current timeline?
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah. So 8 to 10 weeks is. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, can you rephrase the answer, Dustin? Like, how do you like a project to go? Like,
Yeah,
when you get stuff and just some
yeah,
education,
absolutely. So yeah, I'll step it through that. So 8 to 10 weeks is the entire timeline. That gives you a good benchmark. The way that it works with us and that we like. So a new order rolls in, or a new quote comes in. They approve the quote. That clock doesn't start though until we have assets and an actual order form in hand, a PO. And then that 8 to 10 week clock starts. We don't really need the artwork at the first to start it off, but we definitely need the audio. So we need the entire project spec, which is the PO, saying here's everything I want, and this is what we've both agreed on to that the project's going to be. And then the audio with the cutting sheet is the first step. And from that clock starting right then, it's typically a 4 to 5 week from the time we get stampers in hand, check them in, run test presses, ship to you, you approve, and that usually lasts right about 4 to 5 weeks. That's the halfway mark. At that point, hopefully art files have come in sometime in there, so we're kind of ahead of the clock a little bit. And then what you can expect is the next 4 to 5 weeks is us putting them in the queue, actually pressing the records themselves, packaging the records, shipping the records. Yeah, so that's it. So the biggest needs are going to be audio and then the center labels. So the center label art, a record cannot be pressed without the center label. The center label is literally 2 circles that are paper that go into the press and are molded into the plastic, which a lot of people don't know. A lot of people, I think, just from giving a lot of tours, they think the record gets pressed and you get a circle, and then you cut a master onto it, and then you put some label stickers on it, and then that's your record. But it's actually the audio comes first, and the record is molded with those grooves, and at that same time, those labels are transported in. So if you can think like that, it makes a lot of sense that you need the audio and the center labels. And then the jacket is the last thing because it has to be packed. But the jacket usually takes about a month in real time from the time it's approved to when it's physically in our hands to pack. So yeah, 8 to 10 weeks is it. We do have some rush options available, of course, and then we pay more to cutting and plating. We pay more to the printers to get it to the front of their queues, and then of course we have to displace our own jobs and so it costs a little bit more to do that. So it's relatively expensive, and we try to hit everybody's target date. I mean, we rarely miss a date. That's like I'm going to say, but that's our fault, right? If it's something where somebody just decided not to review the test press and say anything to us for 3 weeks, and then you're going to be 3 weeks late on your project, I don't know what to say. I want to get you to the front, but I just can't always do that. So yeah, 8 to 10 halfway marks is the test press in your hand, and then the last part is getting it to you fully packed.
Yeah, because on our end, once we get approved audio that's correct, it's 10 days to ship you stampers,
Sure.
So the process can be as fast as 8 to 10 weeks. And what slows it down, honestly, is just, oh, that's the wrong mix. Oh, no, or that the song order's wrong, or just those kind of things where somebody in the band's camp, or like you said, the test press can sit for a couple weeks, and that's just eroded time, So
yeah, and artwork is a big one. Usually the audio comes from professionals. It comes from a professional studio, and everybody involved kind of has their own timelines. But the graphic design side, a lot of times, is kind of freelance work, and so it's the last piece to be done. Again, which is fine as long as you hit it early in the window. But like, if somebody gives me, they have a release schedule and they have their show schedule, which happens all the time before they start production. Fine, okay, give yourself plenty of time. Give yourself a couple of extra weeks, by the way. And then if you don't, if something's wrong with your jacket artwork, somebody didn't give it the right credits or something like that, it can really hold it up for weeks.
Yeah.
We're just sitting around with finished records that we can't pack. And I mean, it happens a lot more often than you can imagine.
Yeah. We get, even a week, sometimes we'll get some files that are corrupted or something, or, the CD, the vinyl song order doesn't match what we get. And it just, it kind of slows everything down. So you said assets earlier. That means, do your homework, double check everything. Yeah. So let's do a few more questions. We got a lot of good ones here.
Yeah.
Jeff, this is a fun one. Oh, no, here's one from Bob. We'll get to Jeff's in a second. What's the smallest quantity worth pressing?
Yeah. So we offer 300 is the smallest we do. That's really when you get in cutting, plating, upfront costs, you get printing, upfront costs. Really under 300 doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're really doing, you're paying, literally you could be paying like $15 a disc if you're doing 100 discs or something, or $20 a disc. So unless you're going to sell them for 60, it's pretty tough to recoup your money. So some brokers and some plants do 100 as a loss leader, I guess. I just always feel terrible. I'm like, literally you're paying 18. So most of the average on that is like $18 a record. If you just, I think per unit. And then when I was playing music and doing stuff for my band, that's how I thought, whether it was t-shirt or whatever. So I'm going to think per unit. And for that, I want to get the biggest bang for my buck, and what can I really sell it for? And then I work backwards from there. And that's on, hi, baby. Bye. Enjoy. That's my 2-year-old. She has swimming trunks on. I guess she's going to go to the pool with mommy. Lucky. We're sitting here getting Chris, getting darker.
You said earlier, the stamper can do 1,200 records. And if you pay for that stamper, right, that can do 1,200 records, and you press 100 records.
Yeah.
That it's all a setup cost. My point, Dustin, is you're not making more money as a pressing plant per record.
We're actually making a lot less. Yeah. We lose on 300 unit jobs. We're really close to losing money regardless, even if everything goes perfect. And if there's one snag, we usually lose money on doing 300 units. So 100s, it doesn't make sense for anybody, us, and definitely not for the artist. And then the other one, the printers don't do under. So when you buy 300 jackets, even you're actually paying for 500. So you might as well get all those shipped to you. You are? No. Here, wait, come here. Come here, you see that? What are we doing?
Oh, hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Are you gonna go swimming?
Huh? Okay, that's on you.
Well, yeah, and vinyl mastering costs the same whether you're doing 10 records or 10,000. So that's kind of the.
You can get 1,000. If you can sell 1,000, go for it. That's the best price by far, and then it gets cheaper from there. You're talking by a lot.
So Joel has a great question too. How does the timing work with artwork? Do you handle artwork in house?
Yeah, so we do the pre-flight, and then we ship we send those digital files off to pre-press, and you guys approve them. The artist approves them, our client. But we do not print in house now.
Yeah.
We do one thing that's kind of cool. We do specific for our business is we make the center labels though, and it's like a proprietary label that can withstand the heat of a press. The only reason that really matters to anybody outside of us is that they're color fast, and so those labels don't change colors at all. One thing to note, at literally every other label that gets used, the center label is what I'm talking about, that paper we spoke about. The color changes because there's a moisture in the paper, and they have to take it and put it into literally an oven, like a lab oven, and bake the moisture out, and then put them into the record press to then press them, because you're using 300 some odd degrees of pressure and steam to actually make a record. So what happens is your label changes color during that process, during the pre-cook and then in the press. So ours are color fast. Literally, whatever the file you give us, when you get the file, when you get the finished record in your hand, it looks exactly like that. same exact color. So that's a big deal, and we learned that early on. The first 6 months of pressing, we didn't have them. We weren't able to make them, and the white labels end up being gray. A black label ended up being more gray, and colors were kind of all over the place. It would dull them out. So now you get exactly what it is that you want it to look like, which is pretty awesome. That was my
Yeah,
side
Joel.
artwork.
Yeah, and I like to tell people it's like while your record is being mixed and all that, just start the artwork. You can be ahead of the game. Just run that stuff in parallel. Don't wait for the audio to be done and that vinyl mastering to start the artwork. Just run it. That way you can take your time with it and get it right and have some fun with it.
Yeah,
no one likes
job when they deliver the new order form, deposit, and here's your art and music. And
Yep.
we're not hassling you all the time. I mean, hassles, but we're not trading literally sometimes 60 emails to get some very simple, basic things across the line. Yeah, just deliver it all up front and let's go.
Yeah. Well, here's one last question from Jeff. Have you done any special records for day releases that you are proud of? Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah. It's funny. The first year, one of the coolest ones we did, and I think it's because local record, and I love the band, was the Old 97s. And they did an etch. I'm sure you guys remember, and it was just said Old 97s on it. It was pressed in like white or whatever. And it was a single side LP of audio, and then the other side was an etch. Thought that was really cool. We did some stuff with the Byrds and Gene Clark, which was a cool one. Trying to remember Tommy Emmanuel. We've done a couple of those that were pretty awesome. We did one crazy one. We did the guy from Spinal Tap, which does all the voiceovers on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And, he's called Derek Rogers on Spinal Tap. There was it was like not last year's, maybe it was the year before last or last year's Record Store Day. And it was like it wasn't a Spinal Tap record. It was like him doing songs that he thought could have been on Spinal Tap, but it was like a bass-centric, kind of crazy out there album. That's cool.
I remember that one because Dan, who does our etchings, because the first version of this record was going to have an etching.
Yeah.
So this is a fun story. So Dan comes to me and goes, "Hey, this is a Spinal Tap guy. I want to submit an etching that's so small, smaller than what they asked for, as a joke. Are you cool with that?" I said, "Hell yeah, I'm cool with that." Yeah. Because if you know Spinal Tap, you know that the Stonehenge comes down smaller.
Literally,
yeah.
Danger of being crushed by dwarves. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, Harry Shearer. Yeah, that's who it is. So
Harry
yeah.
Shearer. Yes,
so,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Thanks, Bob. So yeah. So that's how it can happen with small companies. We all get it, and we were ready to take that risk, knowing that it's a joke, right? So
yeah,
and hopefully we appreciate it.
Yeah.
So well, we try to keep these in an hour, so we're a little over an hour. So thanks to all the questions. Dustin, how can people get a hold of you if they want a record pressed, and how easy is it?
Yeah. So we have two websites, Hand Drawn Records. So Hand Drawn Records, all one word. .com is the label side, so you don't need to worry about that, but it will redirect you through a couple links. But it's Hand Drawn Pressing. Makes sense, right? So handdrawnpressing.com. Yeah, super easy to get an order started. There's, get a quote or hit an order form and just put in your details. We get going. There's also, of course, the call us, email us right there from the website. We answer very quickly. We answer all emails, et cetera, within 24 hours. Again, I don't like to be on the phone, so I'll make John Snodgrass call you back. So if you call me, John Snodgrass will be calling you back.
Yeah. So hit him up for quotes. If Hand Drawn does your project, if you choose Hand Drawn, then Welcome to 1979 is going to do the vinyl mastering and pressing. So we're involved in the quality side. You can pick your own lacquer cutter and ship it and all that kind of stuff. So however you want to do it, you can do it. But Dustin and John are awesome with questions. So don't assume anything. Just ask them a question they know. So
yeah, and we love to spread the information out, right?
Yep.
Get everybody knowledgeable. And this is Chris, and this is a cool series. Thank you for doing these. I think it makes a difference. A lot of people wonder about all this stuff, and we just think people know at this point, but it's a lot.
Yeah, and I've got some downtime because I'm not doing recording sessions right now. Right. So why not? We would never have the time to do this normally. So I'm just taking some lemons and making lemonade. So, but thank you for your time, Dustin.
Thanks, sir.
And all right, I'll talk to you later, Dustin.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thanks for everybody with the questions. Bye-bye.
All right.